Hi ladies and gentlemen, author Maria Dismondy here, publisher of Cardinal Rule Press. So today we had some technical difficulties and the interview with Laura Stanfill from Forest Avenue Press still happened. So we did it a little bit differently. The Facebook Live, we just had some browser issues, and I thank Laura for being so generous with her time. She had to go off to another meeting. I had to pick up my son from preschool, and we still made the interview happen, and it's 14 minutes of fantastic advice. So what I'm going to do for you now is I actually recorded the interview on a program I used on my desktop or on my laptop, and I'm going to share the interview with you right now as Laura from Forest Avenue Press tells you all about how you can decide whether or not a publisher is a correct fit for you. So she has some great advice for you. Are you ready for it? Here we go. I will not take a lot of your time. I have to go get my kid from preschool, so I don't have a lot of time either. So bear with me here. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome today. I'm super excited for the publisher series. We have Laura Stanfill here from Forest Avenue Press. Laura, one of the things that really I was drawn to was your ability to talk about community and the importance. You value importance of community. And so if I could just turn it over to you, tell me a little bit about your publishing company and how you incorporate community and people into that company.
Thanks for having me, Maria. Community is my favorite topic of all things because I founded my company based on community. I saw a lot of Oregon writers who were looking to knock on doors in New York, and they weren't getting much traction. And I thought I could be one more home for publishing literary fiction here in the Pacific Northwest. So I started out not really knowing what I was doing as a publisher, but I knew that I had a strong community base. And so we have a press because of this community, and because people responded to our first book, we published a second book, and because they responded to the second book, we published a third book. And now we're celebrating 5 years this fall. So
5 years, and how many titles now?
About 11.
Excellent.
11, 12, so we're in there. It depends on if you're counting the ones that are in the queue but not out yet.
Excellent. Good for you. And then I noticed, do you want to tell us a little bit about your most recent release? There was a new release just about a month ago, correct?
Absolutely. It's called Queen of Spades. It's by Michael Shuyang Shum, and it was just there's an excerpt on Literary Hub today for the book, and it's set in a casino in Seattle in the 1980s, and it's beautiful, it's classic writing, it's very smart writing, and it's based on the Pushkin short story of the same name, but it's a novel. So.
Very cool. I love that it's set in, you said in the 1980s?
Yes.
That's totally my thing. Whether there's a book or a television show, anything that has to do with the 80s, I'm all about it. So that's
There's even a frosted perm.
That's the best. That's the best. And one of the things you also talk about is that your titles are sometimes nutty. So what would be an example of a nutty title of yours?
Well, I spent this past weekend with one of my authors, Jamie Jordan, author of Frolic's Ladder, and it's about two brothers who get into a grudge over a woman. And one of them gets so mad he climbs up a giant ladder and lives there for the next 20 years. So that's nutty.
That is so nutty. I wonder how it works out for him. I'll have to see in that book. Now, is that coming out, or will that be a new release in the future?
That's already out. It came out last year, and it's fun to hear him talk about his blend of literary fiction and storytelling and zaniness, and that really appeals to me. I mean, not all of our books are super fun or magical, but we have a number of them that are.
Excellent. Well, I invited you here today because I feel like you're this wealth of knowledge, and the people listening are aspiring writers, people who want to be published, people who are interested, they have a story, they have a message to share, but they're just not quite sure which direction to go. So today you're going to talk to us about how to really discover which publishing company is a good fit for you. Now, I know when I first got started, I bought the Writer's Digest book for children's writers and illustrators. There are thousands of publishers in there. I literally read it from front to back, looking for the company that would be a good fit for me. And that's exhausting. So do you have any better advice than that?
My first advice I give to people who are looking for publishers or even agents is look on your bookshelf. What have you read that speaks to you? What books are out there that made you go, oh, this is like my voice, or this is this is a story I'm really interested in. I just love this book. It may not be a perfect title fit, a comparison title. It may not be exactly the same type of thing. I got my first agent because I fell in love with a memoir.
Okay.
And I was a fiction writer, but the memoir's voice sounded like my voice. And sure enough, she responded to that and I got it. So start at home, go to your local library and check out books that look like your book.
Okay.
Or go to the local bookstore and buy books that look like your book and figure out, or just even browse, look at them. Who's publishing them?
That's what I was going to say. What would be the next step? Like, so you see it, but like, how do you know? You're looking at the publisher and you have to then look for, now sometimes you look for the agent too, correct?
Well, if you're looking for a big five deal and you want an agent to go that route, the agents know all the editors at the big houses really well. So you would look for an agent if that's your goal. But if your goal is to publish with a small press, you look at the small press, you look at the acknowledgments, and you can find out if the small press has a number of editors, you can figure out which editor worked on that book from the acknowledgments and make a list. Go to the website, read some interviews, read some articles, read one of the books. And if it feels like a good fit, you pitch with that in mind. You say that I'm submitting to you because I read Queen of Spades by Michael Shu Young Shum and it was really good. And my book is like that because of blah.
And I feel like that really adds like a personal touch to it so that when you are on the receiving end of a manuscript of a proposal, you're saying, wow, they know what we're writing, they know what we're publishing, they know what our writers are releasing, and they did their homework, right?
Absolutely. And we tend to do personalized rejections if we can figure out something to say for people who have taken the time to get to know who we are. And it's so obvious to those of us in the industry if a writer doesn't actually know what they're submitting to. Like if they say dear agent when they're submitting to a publisher, it's a red flag that I am one of 100 submissions or whatever. And they're probably not that interested in learning about who we are because we're all people. I think that's the piece that a lot of authors miss when they're sitting behind their screens thinking, how do I get attention? We're people here and we want to read your books and we want you to be successful because that's why we do what we do. So finding the place that is the right taste match is all about reading and also then being able to discuss what you're actually doing in your work. You really need the right vocabulary. You really need a good pitch to be able to say, this is who I am in this book, in this manuscript.
I think it's also important. I'm just going to ask you this real quick question before we move on. Submission guidelines. So I'm not sure, I haven't been to your submissions page, but oftentimes publishers have a set of guidelines that you have to follow. And you sometimes are wasting your time if you're not reading those guidelines.
Absolutely. I get really specific when we're open for submissions about what I'm looking for in that particular time period. I did some fun magical novels in a row, and I asked the next time for contemporary novels that were not magical because I wanted to round out my catalog. And so that worked. And it saved everybody a lot of time because if I was able to articulate what I didn't want and articulate what I did want, then we had a better chance of finding that match. And it wasted less people's time, and there was some self-selection and winnowing. And also people who came to the site and read about our submissions process and what we were looking for could recommend it to other people. So that's back to community. This isn't me, but my friend so-and-so has this book.
Oh, I love that. And it's saving time on both ends. On your end, you're not reading as many that don't fit. And then on the other person's end, they're not submitting something that's not a good fit for you.
Exactly. And it's better. Not all the presses do really specific guidelines, but I try to. And for writers looking for the right place, it really helps winnow down, oh yeah, this is a good fit and this isn't a good fit. I've been on panels with other publishers where we have very different tastes and we're all kind of looking at each other like, oh yeah, that's why she published that book and I didn't publish that book.
That's good to know. And I love that you keep bringing it back to community. Like you're a person and you're looking for a specific fit. And it's not like, it's not like going through a drive-through and you're going to pick A, B, or C and that's what you're going to get. Like this is very, it's not as specific as that. Like you're not going to go and say, okay, here's my book. I'm going to submit it to 10 different publishers and someone's going to take it. No, you're going to have to look even closer because it's not just a black and white menu. That's
exactly.
Not an analogy.
And not even, it's a relationship between the author and publisher. Ultimately, at the small press level, we work so closely. I've fed my author snacks out of my purse, I've attended their housewarming parties because when I started, I was only publishing here in Oregon so we could meet in person. We've had umpteen cups of coffee and tea together. And it's relationship building. And when I pick a book, I'm picking a human being I want to work with too.
Absolutely. And that is such a big component of it. And when I'm coaching and talking to different writers, I say your relationship with the publisher is so important, because if the publisher knows what your mission is, what you're passionate about behind that book, they're going to help explore that. They're going to help share that with other people. And you have to also help support them. So it's a team effort, and you're all out for the same mission, and the same goal is to sell that book and to get that message out there.
Exactly. And the more unified our team is, and the more we work together and have transparency and conversations about what our goals are, the better we'll do as a team.
Okay. Oh, I love that you were publishing Oregon writers so that you could be like close in proximity. My first title was a local publisher, and my editor and I, we sat next to each other, shoulder to shoulder, editing the entire book, like the entire process. And since then, I've been working with an editor across the country, and I've never met her in person, and that's so hard, like to go from shoulder to shoulder to email.
I love it. I love being shoulder to shoulder, and I have gone out of my way to meet my authors who don't live in Oregon, so I've actually met all of my authors in person now. So
that's really neat. That is so neat.
Good.
This is excellent advice. So for those of you who are catching the tail end, please rewind. I'm going to be putting this out there so people can see, because you want to hear the very beginning of how to find a publisher that is really a good fit for you. So do you have any other advice for beginning writers who have this novel, this book, this poetry, whatever it is they're wanting to publish? Do you have any other advice at the end of the day for them?
I do. I want writers to think about their dreams. What is the writer dream? And finding a press that can create a semblance of that dream, a version of it in reality, turning the potential into reality, into a book. It's really important to know in your heart, in your soul, in your bones, what you want out of publishing. Because if you want to walk into your local independent bookstore and have your book on the shelf face out, you, number one, have to have a relationship with the bookstore. Number two, you have to have a press that has the right discounts and options to allow that bookstore to bring your book into the store. And number three, you need to be ready to show up and do an event and have people show up and do it with you and be in the audience with you. So it's finding a publisher. One of the things that I always like to tell people is take a look at the distribution, because if a publisher has national distribution, then they'll be selling into a lot of independent bookstores. If they have print on demand or a different type of distribution, find out what it is and see how you can match that distribution channel up with your author dream. And
it might not match up, right? It might not match up, and that might not be a good fit for you. That's a really good
Exactly.
point.
I'm very indie bookstore friendly, and that's all I want people to do. And so when we were doing print on demand, I would drive around little boxes of our books to the different bookstores and put them out on consignment, so my authors could still see them in the bookstores and people could come in and buy them. But a lot of, and if that's the kind of thing you want, your publisher needs to know it and needs to be able to work with you, or it's not the right publisher fit.
Fantastic.
Because ultimately, if you can't get your books where your audience is, or where you want to see your audience grow, then you're going to have disappointment as a writer.
Absolutely.
Even a published one.
I share that with you. I had an interview yesterday, and someone asked me, well, where can we find your books, Maria? Because I'm not only a publisher, but I also have some titles out. And she said, oh, on Amazon? And I said, well, yeah, but go to your local bookstore. And we have national distribution. Like, go to your local bookstore and ask for it there and support your local bookstore. Because I know here in our town, we have a very small amount of local bookstores now because, it's just the convenience of going online. So I love that. And I love to still support those businesses so that we can keep them and we can walk into them and see hundreds of books on the shelves and touch the books.
Well,
I'm a big touching book fan. I don't read any. I read a real book every night. So
I'm the same way. And in addition to walking into the bookstore and having that tactile experience and being able to look at the covers and flip the covers over and see what is on the other side and read the blurbs by ourselves, we're also building relationships with other people in that store.
Yeah.
And saying hello to them or being at an event, sitting next to somebody. We come home with friends. And so that feels really important to me too, that we can engage in dialogue, we can engage in community values and society building exercises of talking about ideas and characters and themes and life together in a brick and mortar bookstore. And also those booksellers hand sell our titles, and I can't be more grateful to them, because if they weren't out there selling our titles or putting our book's face out, discoverability would be a lot harder. So yeah, it's all in this together.
Yeah, and you're right. Like, this might not be important to every single person who has a manuscript, so that's a question that you want to think about. So you gave about three really good points today for people to think about, and I value your time, and I value your ability to be here and to make time for this community, for your community and for mine. So thank you very much, Laura.
Thank you so much, Maria. I appreciate having the time with you today.
Right, and I know you're going out into the community right after this to do some talking, aren't you?
Yeah.
So thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too. Enjoy the rest of your day.
So friends, wasn't that a fantastic interview? Laura gave so many points for aspiring writers on how to find a publisher that is a good fit for you. So if you're just tuning in, please go ahead and hit the like button or maybe the little smiley face to let us know that you're here. Tell us where you're tuning in from, but be sure to rewind. This Facebook Live interview is 14 minutes chock full of advice from the publisher, Forest Avenue Press, out of Oregon, Portland, Oregon, with Laura Stanfill. A lot of really great advice. Now, I want you to know that next week we are going to be having an interview, and this was really fun. So the publisher, Wild Iris, and sometimes I say it fast and it sounds like Irish, but it's Iris. David Fitzsimmons, I had an interview with him, and he was unable to make it next week because he is going to be at an event as a publisher. So him and I actually did a call a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to be posting that call, that video here in this space. But he lives in Ohio, and he got really good self-service up on a hill in a field and a farm. So he and I have an interview, and he's coming to you from a farm in Ohio. And in that, it's really a unique interview. You'll get to hear all about publishing nonfiction. So if you're tuning into this right now and you're saying, wow, like, Maria, you've had many people in here talking about children's picture books, and you had Laura Stanfill talking about fiction and fantasy, and she has a lot of really great different genres. What about, and we had another adult novelist come on, a publisher talking about, that was Alexa, talking about her company and the books. She does a lot of passion projects. So you might be sitting there thinking, well, what about nonfiction? So I'm covering all the bases, and you will hear that interview with David Fitzsimmons next week. So please tune in. After David Fitzsimmons, we have a few more interviews to wrap up the publisher series. Please share this video if you know of a friend who would love this advice from these very talented expert publishers. Have a great day, everyone.